Scarlet and Violet's gym leaders are such a mixed bag for me. I love all the designs and most of the characters. Most of them. I also think that the team compositions are quite charming too, as each leader tends to have both an ace exclusive to the Gen 9 games, as well as a Terra ace, often fitting the motif of the gym leader. It's really cool. However, a lot of these fights are lacking in sufficient firepower, as well as others outright needing a roster change or two. You know what I'm talking about, Grusha. So, let's fix the Paldean gym leaders. Starting with Katy, who runs a truly formidable trio, and oh, they're dead. Going to be honest, there's not really a whole lot you can do here. It's bad enough being a bug-type gym leader, and it's even worse being numero uno. Typically, the first gym is a lesson for the trainer about type matchups, where you learn what works against a team in order to prevail. But if the team is a pushover from the get-go, as well as a type as historically weak as bugs, then you're in for a sleepwalk of a fight. So with Katy, I think you can either just lean into the character without the concerns for type matchups, or maybe round out the team a lot better. I think her Baker design is quite cute, and god I wish she was real, and having a Teddy Ursa as her Terra ace is befitting. I'd buff up its moveset though. Like, Fury Swipes can be pretty dangerous, but Covet, which it learns at level 1, would do solid, not too overpowered damage consistently every time. Also, Lick doesn't feel too out there for a Pokemon in a bakery, so I think that this is a decently rounded moveset for the first major fight in the game. Conversely, Nimble and Tarantula don't really match the vibe of Katy at all. In all honesty, I'd probably keep Tarantula as the Paldean ace, but as for Nimble, I think it could be replaced with one of two Pokemon. If you want a full Bug Baker team-style makeup, then Combee would be a bee-fitting member of the team. B. It also already knows the only moves it can learn by level 1, let alone level 14, so if it can get a Stab Gust off, it might do at least 3 damage? Alternatively, I think an appropriate yet better team member would be Surskit. For 1, it's a cutie pie, and for 2, excluding the Volcarona line, it's the only bug type that isn't weak to fire in the main Paldea Pokedex. So, if you were to give it Struggle Bug, Quick Attack, Water Gun, and potentially even Soak, you have a Pokemon that might be mildly threatening, unless, you have a bird, or a rock. Tarantula might not really fit the vibe Katy's team is creating, but you know what also wouldn't? Spidops. This is pretty much why Tarantula stays, on top of the fact no other Paldean bug matches up well with Katy, as despite being able to evolve at level 14, Katy opted not to, which, bro, Spidops has these stats. What do you have against your own bugs? You'd think a fully evolved Pokemon for the first gym would be a bit much, and then you'd remember that Spidops has less attack than the Bear Cub, inexplicably. Seriously, you can keep the moves Tarantula had, and I honestly doubt much changes, beyond it being able to withstand more attacks. A team like this provides slightly more challenge, whilst reinforcing the importance of type matchups to the player. Now we can talk about some hard hitters though, because second is Brassius, and his team is oh they're dead too. Come on dude, 2 gym leaders in a row that would lose a fight to a T-Light. It doesn't have to be a ground-breaking team, it just has to not be completely countered by the chubby crocodile. As Brassius strives as an artist outside of battle, you'd think something as picturesque as nature would play wonderfully into his possible options for grass types on the team. And then you remember he has this little goober, this baby seed, and a tree that does fit, yet becomes much worse when it terastallizes. Come on bro, I think that Petilil needs to go. It's pretty uninspiring as a monograss lead. In my mind, the best fit to replace it would be another Unovan grass type, Deerling. It represents the beauty of nature with its 4 seasonal forms, and it's also not a pushover. Giving this guy Tackle, Double Kick, Bullet Seed, and Leech Seed would give Brassius a strong showing out of the gate. An issue with Deerling is that there'd be 2 normal grass types on the team if you keep Smoliv, and it's a bit of a shame, because I really like this little guy, and I don't think there's really many better grass type options in Paldea that fit the team better. Sorry, Wo-Chien. However, I think you can swap out this little dork, ideally having its evolutionary line now free for a certain champion to use instead, and substituting Capsakid. It might look strange, and its evolution may be part of Arven's squad, but I think that the fiery undertones of Capsakid, like Brassius' burning passion for art, synergizes with his character well enough to be his Paldean ace. As its stats are nothing to write home about either, a moveset of Growth, Sunny Day, Razor Leaf, and Bite give it opportunities to buff its strength, or double its speed in the sun. Rarely would this be an issue too strong for the player to overcome in my mind, although it's considerably better than Smoliv's offerings. Last but not least, Sudowoodo is probably a terrible Pokemon Pokemon as a Terra Ace for Brassius, but it's cute that it gets to fulfill its goal of successfully masquerading as a grass type. Also, Sudowoodo at level 1 learns Stone Edge and Woodhammer. It would be really funny to just demolish every child's Crocodile and Quaxwell inexplicably, but it's got to be befitting for the area in the game. At the very least, give it Slam since that's not crazy overpowered and it learns it upon evolution. I mean, you're stonewalled by steel types, but frankly, an early grass type gym leader would never be that hard anyways. Okay, unlike the other two losers we've covered so far, Iono actually has a fairly decent team composition already. For one, she has Bellybolt, and this is my son. Also, her team is just kinda filthy. Mismagius as the Terra Ace is my favourite choice of all the gym leaders, and everyone fits the team. Well, except this guy, maybe, but I can work with it. What I can't work with, though, are their move pools. Look at them. Mismagius has one of the easiest strategies to cheese in the game. Just get a ground and normal type, switch a bunch, and you can't lose. I don't have much else to criticize this team over, so let's just run through some optimal moveset updates. Give Wattrel Uproar or Roost. It doesn't really matter which in my opinion. Give Luxio Tackle, simply because it's the only move it learns via level up that can give more sufficient and safe coverage. Give Bellybolt Mudshot, and maybe even Slack Off if you want to be really nasty. And give Mismagius Magical Leaf. Just expanding the movesets a little bit already makes these fights more challenging on the brain, and marks a noted increase in the gym's difficulty, in my opinion. Right, Kofu's 4th. I don't hate this team, but I do hate him though. 2 of these Pokemon make sense for a fishmonger to have. Why does he have Wugtrio? I mean, I get why. No one else would use it. Yet Veluza feels like a better choice for a Paldean Ace, and there's so many other water types to use instead. As such, I'd sub out the Phallic Worms for Barraskewda, as both pretty much function the same, but this fish is just way better at its job. Dive and Throat Chop are really solid moves it can learn via leveling up, yet the only moves it can learn that may give unique coverage are Fury Attack and Peck, which are, in my mind, pretty garbage. So, I think by this point in the game, gym leaders can look towards TMs to bolster movesets even more than what their Pokemon naturally learn. In the case of Barraskewda, that would be, for me, Takedown and Ice Fang. Powerful-ish moves that shouldn't completely wall your team. Veluza can get away with Focus Energy in my mind, as it learns that by leveling up. Maybe Drill Run if you want decent coverage, yet I think that it already knows quite a decent array of attacks. However, there's one massive question I have that pertains to Kofu. Why do you and Larry only have 3 Pokemon when Iono had 4? It's so bizarre, and that has to change. There are quite a few options in my mind for who would fit, but considering that all 3 of his Pokemon are physical attackers, I'm going to go with Luminion. You know, the quintessential forgettable Pokemon. And it's on a team with Veluza, no less. But I think moves like Water Pulse, Attract, and Rain Dance from its learn set would be fairly solid, as well as Dazzling Gleam from the TM's list too. I don't know why this guy isn't a fairy, to be honest. It deserves something going for it. Which leaves Crabominable last, who is an interesting Pokemon to buff. I get to some extent why they'd want to neuter its options, as it is super strong. But like, this thing can have Ice Punch and Brick Break. By the 4th gym, you'll likely have decent answers to most types naturally. So starting to scale some of the movesets into dangerous territory isn't the worst thing in the world, and would make an otherwise straightforward fight like before now something far better. And speaking of far better, Larry is obviously the GOAT compared to everyone in this game, and his team is pretty great too. All 3 of these make sense in some way. The comatose nature of an overworked salaryman reflects in Kamala. The Dunsparce is the Paldean Ace because it sure as hell wasn't going to be Squawkabilly or Oinkalone, and Staraptor is a foreshadow of the Elite Four reveal. Part of me wanted to change it for a ghost type to reflect the dead-in-the-eyes nature of corporate bureaucracy and exploitation of the working class. But no, I like the bird. That being said, at the risk of sounding like a broken record, this is the 5th gym, and the Ace has 2 moves! These guys need something more. So, like with Iono, we can fix this up just with some moveset additions. Kamala can learn Rollout fairly early, and I think that with its attack stat, this could let it cook something dangerous if it isn't stopped quickly. The Dunsparce is 1 level shy of Roost, which would be great to learn, yet I'll just give it Ancient Power instead, as the chance of an Omni Boost paired with Serene Grace is pretty filthy. Now, for an extra Pokemon on the team, I had a fair bit of fun with this one. Vigoroth or Slacking to represent Larry's work ethic externally, a Chansey to keep him cheery on the job, or a Mousehold to remind him of his wife and children he's having to neglect. though I'm going to go with Indeedee. It's an uncommon enough Pokemon, it's a special attacker unlike Larry's pre-existing trio, and its Pokedex entry also reflects on it caring for its trainer's day-to-day needs. Swift, Psychic, Disarming Voice for coverage, and Encore for being a nuisance would make for a tidy arsenal that can counteract normal and Psychic type weaknesses. Lastly, this might be a bit overkill, but Staraptor does learn close combat upon evolving. It's borderline excessive, however it would transform Staraptor into a dangerous main event that could ruin a team before you know it. And you know what? I kind of like it. Ryme is 6th, and like Iono, she's another gym leader who I think nails the choices for her Pokemon quite well. I mean, there's not a whole lot of overlap between ghost types and an elderly rapper, except for death. Toxtricity fits the motif to a T, and according to Ryme's backstory, she seems to have a lot of attachment to her former puppy Pokemon. So Houndstone, along with 2 doll-like ghosts, seems really befitting. And in all honesty, the movesets aren't half bad either. I genuinely think Ryme might be the hardest gym leader if you're not careful, even in spite of the fact that none of her Pokemon have full movesets. Why is every trainer allergic to this? Still, that makes it easy to remedy. Banette might not have a crazy good moveset, yet I like the central theme of speed control with its moves, so the only thing I'd change is rounding it out with Will-O-Wisp. Considering Mimikyu has Light Screen to mitigate special moves, this gives Ryme the option to do the same to physical attackers too. Her Ghostly Fairy can do some damage with Slash and Shadow Sneak, though I think Shadow Claw is a much better option than the latter, so that's changing for sure. I'd like to give it Play Rough, yet it both doesn't learn that until level 54, and also Houndstone knows it. So I'm opting for Hone Claws instead, as paired with its disguise ability, it gives the possibility for a safe power boost with its other moves. Houndstone has 2 great options to add to his pretty awesome moveset. One is Helping Hand, which, come on, surely fits the double battle vibe and could empower Ryme's team. Or, if you give it Roar, it can remove a threat on the field. Either of these work, leaving just Toxtricity, who's a bit of a harder nut to crack. While Toxic and Swagger might be great moves, I think sound-based stage moves fit Ryme's approach with her ace much more. So instead, I'd choose Screech. A bit of a boring choice, yet it matches in style, and although it doesn't benefit Toxtricity at all, the fact its 3 partners are all physical attackers means they can benefit a lot from it, which is everything in a double battle. These changes are pretty solid, in my mind, for the last trainer who doesn't need a much more substantial fix to their team. Because 7th is Tulip, and while I get what she's going for, I don't know, man. Her whole aesthetic is around aesthetic, so I'm glad she has a bunch of PILFs on her team. PILF, of course, standing for Pokemon I'd like to fight in battle, and Farigiraf is not a PILF. It's not only nothing like the vibe of the others, it's also got a really easy moveset to abuse. For some reason, it's a physical attacker, despite it being its worst stat. If you have a special attacking dark type, it's so over for Tulip. I was initially leaning towards Hatterene, but 4 special attackers feels like it needs some variety, and I think that's remedied with Medicham. There's some mild lore that can be linked, as Tulip is canonically good friends with Dendra, who is a fighting type specialist in her own right, and it can provide sufficient coverage against dark and steel types.
Also, it's right there.
It's at this point too, I think a markedly more powerful set of moves is in order. From this, Medicham would have Zen Headbutt and High Jump Kick for stab, Ice Punch for coverage, and Reflect to protect its team from physical attackers. Gardevoir has great coverage with Energy Ball, though it's not really useful, so I'd opt for Aura Sphere instead to continue that coverage against steel types. Espathra could replace Quick Attack with Agility, as the 7th gym leader having a 40 base power move on one of their Pokemon is downright shameful, as well as Dazzling Gleam to round out the moveset. Finally, for Florges, absolutely get rid of Petal Blizzard for Petal Dance, to make sure it's using its better attacking stat, and if it's going to learn anything else, it might as well be Synthesis to give it some long-standing bulk that may make it difficult to conquer. This might seem like a bit much for her team, but considering how much of a pushover she is, this only seems right. And speaking of pushovers, Grusha is last, and yeah, this one needs a fair bit of work done to it. This should theoretically be the hardest gym leader, and I mean I can see why. Just look at their team and oh, I've done this joke again, well done me. Pokemon's insistence on making an Ice-type gym leader a late-game problem rarely if ever works. I mean Melanie from Shield and Candice from Platinum were pretty troublesome, but Price and Wulfric encapsulate the issue perfectly, as in they get absolutely clobbered. So, let's make this team something troubling by utilizing one of the new weather mechanics in Generation 9. This might be cheating slightly, but I think that the battle should always have permanent snow. Some gym fights can have rain or a sandstorm start at random, but here, at the top of the snowy mountain peak of Glaciado, it should just be a constant for this fight. Not only will it fit the vibe, but snow also gives ice types a defense boost, so it works twofold. Next, we need to do something to this team. I love ice types, so don't take this the wrong way, but you all stink. You two are gone, and you two need some changes if you're going to stick around. Firstly, let's fix what's staying. Frostmoth is a great Pokemon in my mind, one of my favourites from Galar. Yet if you're not giving it ice scales, what are you even doing? It dies so quickly to fire and rock moves that, at the very least, it might be able to stick around more than one turn with this ability. Secondly, with the new team going forward, I don't think Tailwind will be necessary. Instead, I'd replace it with Aurora Veil, as if we assume the snow sticks, that gives the team decent bulk for the next couple of turns. Lastly, giving it Giga Drain, at the very least, gives Frostmoth answers against rock types. Under the new conditions, this isn't half bad. As for Titan, it fits the best as the Paldean ace, no questions asked. It has good stats, and with thick fat and liquidation, it should be able to hold its own somewhat against its many weaknesses. Ice Shard doesn't feel necessary, as it should be bulky enough to fire off big damage, so having Icicle Crash, Liquidation, Earthquake, and Play Rough would be a huge glow up in its move pool. Also, while trainer motifs have taken a bit of a backseat for this one, the tumultuousness of these two lean nicely to the recklessness of a snowboarder. Now then, who's making the team? Not you, bro, that's for sure. In place of Beartick, I think Frostlass would be a really fun fit. Its Snowcloak ability in the weather would not only make it a nightmare, but in terms of Grusha's character of a retired snowboarder, I think this fits him really well. Having a Pokemon who's a mythical spectre, derived from a woman that died in the mountains, would draw some interesting theories for what made him stop doing the sport. A moveset of Frost Breath, Confuse Ray, Will-O-Wisp, and Shadow Ball to top it all off makes for a formidable fighter. And lastly, I'm sorry, Altaria. I know you're a cute dragon cloud duck, but you are not a good Pokemon for the Terra Ace of the final gym leader. You know who fits a lot better though? Gyarados. Look at the facts. Exhibit A. Gyarados is shaped much more like a snowboard. These are all my facts. I just think that Altaria is a terrible fit. I mean, it has less attack than Katy's Teddiursa, and I know it's a special attacker, but it's still mediocre, and both Frostlass and Frostmoth would suffice in my mind. Gyarados, on the other hand, is a Pokemon that I think can make decent work of the ice typing. It's bulky enough that it should withstand a hit from anything, it removes its quadruple weakness to electric, and it can hit back hard with its stats and moveset. Ice Fang is regrettably its best ice type move it can learn, yet combining it with Waterfall, Crunch, and scariest of all, Dragon Dance, would make for a modest Gyarados moveset. However, one last devilish piece of the pie would be its ability. Moxie. Its ability to set up, hit hard, and get boosted when it knocks out your Pokemon is something that I think caps off the final Pokemon in the Gym Challenge journey perfectly. It's not an impossible riddle to solve, it's just a Pokemon that can reverse Grusha's fortunes to make you really work for that win. Anyway, that covers all the changes I'd make to Scarlet and Violet's gym leaders. Thank you for watching if you made it this far, and if you enjoyed it, I'd much appreciate a like and subscribe if you want to see more content like this. Also, let me know in the comments what you make of the changes. I'd love to know where you'd have gone differently.